Good morning, everyone. Dr. Shaima here. So, after yesterday's class on electroencephalogram or EEG, we continue with sleep, basically the physiology of sleep. It's a very interesting chapter. Now, when you look at the physiology of sleep, how first the thing which comes to your mind is how do you define sleep? Sleep is basically a period of bodily rest which is characterized by unconsciousness from which the person can be aroused by any sensory or other stimuli. Or you can even define it as a state in which there is a temporary but reversible cessation of somatic functions. Now, out of the 75 years of life, the sleep time is equivalent to 25 years. That means out of a 75 years average lifespan of a person, 25 years we actually sleep. And the next slide, when you go to the different states of sleep, you even can just put it as the different stages of sleep, or physiological changes which happens during sleep, or the states of being of an individual. The person is in a wakeful state or the person is in sleep, and that sleep we divide into REM and NREM sleep. So basically sleep and wakefulness occur alternatively within 24 hours during the lifespan of an individual. Normally most of the people sleep during the night, but you have the people who work at night who sleep basically during the day. But basically the sleep wakefulness cycle alternates for any person in a 24-hour duration. Now I would just like to brief up before we go to the theories of sleep. What could be the changes happening in the body during sleep? Now during sleep, the basal metabolic rate is very low. That's 10 to 15%. And so all the organs perform the least work when the person is in sleep. Now when you look at the cardiovascular system, the heart rate, the cardiac output and the blood pressure is low. And the respiratory system, deep and regular breathing is seen. Pulmonary ventilation is very low. Alveolar and the arterial partial pressure of oxygen falls, and the partial pressure of carbon dioxide rises. Body temperature is at a minimum level. Urine formation is less. Muscle tone is less. Pupils are constricted. And if you look at the reflexes, the deep reflexes become sluggish. Superficial reflexes, there is no change with the exception of the plantar, which becomes Babinski's positive. Now the central nervous system activity, if you look at, it's basically less. EEG shows the delta waves. Now the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic activity is diminished in a person's body while during sleep with enhanced parasympathetic activity. Now the sleep requirement for a person varies inversely with age. A newborn may sleep for around 16 to 20 hours in a day. Children for around 12 to 14 hours. Adults 7 to 9 hours, and old people 5 hours of sleep is enough for them. So as per the slide, there are two types of sleep. You have the slow wave sleep, which you call as the NREM sleep, or the non-rapid eye movement sleep. And then you have the REM sleep, or the rapid eye movement sleep. Now the slow wave sleep, or the NREM sleep, is divided into 4 stages based on the EEG patterns. I think I'll just come to that in the coming up slides. Before that, let me go take you all to the theories of sleep. There are many theories of which governs sleep. One theory talks about repair and restoration theory. So what this theory tells is sleep enables a person's body and the brain to repair itself after working hard throughout the day. Now brain is about 3% of the total body weight, but uses almost quarter of the energy. Now without sleep, what happens is people start feeling very irritable, dizzy, they start having hallucinations and also impaired or defective concentration. Now, the other few theories which govern sleep are, you have the cerebral anemia theory or the cerebral ischemic theory, the fatigue theory, the chemical theories, and the active theory of sleep. Now, what is the cerebral ischemic theory or the cerebral anemia theory? Now, according to this theory, sleep is basically due to cortical ischemia. Drowsiness that develops after food intake is explained on this basis. Now, after food intake, vasodilatation takes place in the splanchnic area. So, the blood flow to brain decrease and causes cerebral ischemia. So, I think better than cerebral anemic theory, I think you can put it as a cerebral ischemic theory. Now, let's see what the chemical theory is. Chemical theory, or some books even gives it as a biochemical theory. This was basically proposed by Pavlov. I think that name is quite familiar for you all, with the Pavlov's pouch experiment, which we did in, I think, GIT. Now, according to Pavlov, sleep is a special manifestation of conditioned inhibition. Please keep that in mind. That's basically Pavlov's theory. I'm so sorry. What I just mentioned was a Pavlov's theory, which was proposed by Pavlov. There need not be a confusion. It's not the biochemical theory which was proposed by Pavlov. Pavlov's theory is a separate theory. And according to Pavlov's theory, I haven't mentioned in the slide here. According to the Pavlov's theory, sleep is a special manifestation of conditioned inhibition. Is that clear? So, now when we come to the chemical theory, the fatigue theory and the active theory I'll be explaining at the end together. Now, let's see what the chemical theory is. Chemical theory is different chemicals in the body like acetylcholine, lactic acid, hypnotoxin, delta sleep inducing peptide and sleep promoting factor. So, let's see one or two in detail. Acetylcholine, if you look at, sleep may be due to accumulation of acetylcholine in the cerebral cortex. That's what the chemical theory tells. In point of lactic acid, sleep may be due to accumulation of lactic acid during fatigue. Hypnotoxin, cerebrospinal fluid taken from a sleeping dog when injected into another dog also induces sleep. This may be due to hypnotoxin liberated from the brain tissue when the animal was sleeping. So, I think that's it. That's about the chemical part of the theory. Now, let's see what the fatigue theory and the active theory of sleep is. So, basically, sleep is caused by an active inhibitory process. So, a very early theory proposed about sleep was that the excitatory areas of the upper brain stem, the reticular activating system, they simply became fatigued during the waking day and became inactive as a result. So, an important experiment changed this thinking to the current view that sleep is caused by an active inhibitory process, because it was discovered that transecting the brain at the level of the midpons creates a brain cortex that never goes to sleep. In other words, you can put it as a center located below the midpontine level of the brain stem appears to be required to cause sleep by inhibiting all the other parts of the brain. So, that's basically the basic theory of sleep, where you tell that sleep is caused by an active inhibitory process. I think if you can just explain this sleep which is caused by an active inhibitory process, how it happens, how you need to speak about a center which is located below the midpontine level of the brain stem. How it is required to cause sleep, how it inhibits the other different parts of the brain. If you can just tell this last point, I think it will be more than enough, which will give a well description about the theories of sleep. Now let's look at the types of sleep. Now, the types of sleep, there are two types of sleep. You have the slow wave or the synchronized sleep, or you even call it as the non-REM sleep. NREM sleep. Then the next one you have the REM sleep, which is the rapid eye movement or the paradoxical sleep, or you even call it as a non-synchronized sleep. Now, First, I think I would do the REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep, or you call it as the paradoxical sleep or the non-synchronized sleep. Now, this sleep may appear in an interval. So, the REM sleep or the paradoxical sleep may appear in an interval of about 90 minutes. This type of sleep lasts for about 5 to 30 minutes at a time. Now, the physiological changes which happens in the rapid eye movement sleep or the paradoxical sleep is, first and foremost thing, there is rapid movement of the eyeball, or you call it as the saccadic eye movements. Now, to arouse a person from the paradoxical sleep or the REM sleep is it's very difficult. Dreams are seen, and the dreams seen in the REM sleep are well remembered. Heart rate and blood pressure depends upon the nature of the dream. If it's a very peaceful dream, naturally that will depend upon the heart, that will vary the heart rate and the blood pressure. If it's a really tensed, fearful dream, that will have an impact on the heart rate and blood pressure. So that's what it tells. The heart rate and the blood pressure will depend upon what kind of dream the person is seeing. The metabolism in the brain increases. EEG pattern is more similar to wakefulness condition but more deeper in sleep. This is why this type of sleep is also called as paradoxical sleep. You need to remember that point. The EEG pattern you can see is desynchronized. So I think all this I think this part I would just go into. So basically in REM sleep there is where sleep dream is seen. The dreams you're able to recollect. Depending on the type of dream, the heart rate and the blood pressure varies. REM sleep occurs in the first 90 minutes, or it occurs in an interval of 90 minutes, and REM sleep lasts for around 5 to 30 minutes. Now in REM sleep there is reduced, stretched and polysynaptic reflex. There is rapid low voltage irregular waves in EEG, which is very similar to an awake state. I've already mentioned that. Ponto-geniculo-occipital spikes are seen. I'll show you in the coming up slide the waves. There is increased brain metabolic activity, heart rate, respiratory rate are irregular. How you tell that is, I've told you, it varies with the kind of dream you see. Decreased GI movements, temperature, penile erection and muscle twitches are seen. Maturation of neural functions, creativity, consolidation of memory. So I think you can just put all this. Now let's see what are the causes of REM sleep. The causes of REM sleep is basically there is an increased activity of acetylcholine secreting neurons of the brain stem, which is actually activating the cortex. So the origin is from the pons, then it reaches the lateral geniculate body, from there to the occipital cortex, which you see as the PGO spikes. The PGO spikes, or those impulses which travels from the pons to the lateral geniculate body to the occipital cortex, it basically activates the reticular inhibiting areas. Locus coeruleus and the raphe nucleus are silent during the paradoxical sleep or the REM sleep. I think before we go to this, should we cover the NREM sleep? No, one second. Yeah. Okay, so basically I'll go to this figure. So now you need to know one more classification of the stages of sleep. Now I've told you in a 24-hour day of a human being, you have the state of wakefulness and the state of sleep. Sleep was divided into REM sleep and the NREM sleep. Now there's another classification of the different stages of sleep, which is based on the EEG pattern, where you divide it into stage 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and finally the REM sleep or the paradoxical sleep. So this tabular column gives a beautiful view, of the, it's beautifully spread the division, how on the based on EEG, the waves are divided. So stage 0 of the sleep, where in the EEG pattern you can see a very prominent alpha rhythm, which is basically a fast wave with a frequency of 18 to 13 hertz. And in what level of sleep and wakefulness does it occur? The stage 0 of the sleep, when there is a prominent alpha rhythm, the person is fully awake and alert. There's no sleep. That means basically stage 0, there's no sleep happening at all. Now let's come to stage 1 of the sleep, where alpha rhythm, the frequency is around 8 to 13 hertz and it's a fast wave. And the level of sleep is the person is not alert. He is dozing, about to enter into sleep. He is, he is dozing. Basically he hasn't entered into sleep, but slowly his, the processes have started. That is stage 1. Now stage 2 of the sleep, where, you can see A and B. There are two changes happening. The spindles of the wave, spindles of waves are seen, and also the delta rhythm is also seen. So in stage 2 of the sleep, I just repeat, there are two EEG patterns which are seen. Spindles of waves are seen, and also the theta rhythm is seen, which falls in the frequency of 4 to 7 hertz. And that is basically the first phase of sleep, that is stage 2. Now when it comes to stage 3 of sleep, you can see the delta rhythm, which is seen in 0.5 to 3.5 hertz, and the level of sleep is basically the deep slow wave sleep. Now along with the delta rhythm, the theta rhythm, which falls in 4 to 7 hertz, is also seen in stage 3 of sleep. Now when it comes to stage 4 of sleep, it's a delta rhythm which is seen, which comes under the frequency of 0.5 to 3.5 hertz, and it's a deep slow wave sleep. So please note the difference between stage 3 and the 4 wave of sleep. Both has delta rhythm, but theta rhythm is seen only in stage 3 of sleep, and both are deep slow wave sleep. Now the last one, you have the mixed frequency. You can see both the alpha wave and the beta waves of very high frequency, and that stage of sleep you call as the REM sleep or the paradoxical sleep. And in that particular sleep, the level of sleep is rapid eye movement of the eyeball is seen, fast waves resembling wakefulness but more deeper in sleep. Arousal is more difficult in this kind of sleep. So that's about the classification of sleep based on the EEG pattern. So I think we'll go to, so you can see that in this figure here, EEG waves and the wakefulness and the sleep, just what I've explained now. Can you see the alpha wave and the beta wave activity when the person is awake? So that is basically stage 0 of the sleep. Prominently you can see the alpha rhythm, which falls under a frequency of 8 to 13 hertz. Stage 1 of the sleep, where there is, the alpha rhythm with 8 to 13 hertz, it's a fast wave, and in stage 1 of the sleep the person hasn't really entered into the different stages of sleep. He's just dozing, just the process have started. Now stage 2 is basically the first phase of the sleep, where you can see that spindle waves can be seen. That was the first point I mentioned. Can you see the spindles? Now after that you can see the delta rhythm, which is seen in stage 2, which falls in the frequency of 4 to 7 hertz. Now this is basically the first phase of the sleep, stage 2. Now stage 3, when it comes to, you can see both the delta rhythm and also the theta rhythm. Now difference, and when it comes to stage 4, you can see very prominent delta rhythm. But please remember, in the figure only the delta activity is mentioned, but in stage 3, please remember that there is theta activity also happening there in a frequency of 4 to 7 hertz with very prominent delta activity. But in stage 4 of the sleep, there is no delta wave seen, only there is only the delta rhythm seen. The theta rhythm is not seen, and the delta rhythm falls in the frequency of 0.5 to 3.5 hertz. And finally, you have the REM sleep, or the paradoxical sleep, where you can see both alpha and beta waves of very high frequency. So that's about the EEG waves and the wakefulness and the sleep cycle. So that's mentioned here, stage 1, 2 and 3. So basically the slow wave sleep, which is divided into stage 1, 2, 3 and 4. And it's a sleep in which a person enters into the beginning, and the duration is about 30 to 90 minutes at a time in case of a slow wave sleep, or you call it as a synchronized sleep or the non-REM sleep. Now the physiological changes basically happening in this, I think I'll come to the difference later. Yeah, I'll just, yeah. So basically when it comes to the slow wave sleep or the NREM sleep, the physiological changes happening are there is decreased metabolic rate, heart rate is decreased, blood pressure is decreased, there is decrease in the rate and the depth of respiration and alveolar ventilation, there is decrease in sympathetic activities and increase in parasympathetic activities. EEG pattern changes. There are more slow waves, that means there are more of delta waves. Dream may be felt in NREM sleep also, but the difference is whatever dream you see in the non or NREM sleep, you won't be able to remember it, you cannot recollect it. So that's about the NREM sleep. So now let's see this difference. This is a beautiful way, one tabular column is given where, the features, whatever I have explained now, the physiological changes between the REM sleep and NREM sleep have been beautifully mentioned in this chart. So you can see that the first, the point gives around, 11 important factors under which you need to discuss it. Muscle tone, in an non-NREM sleep, there is hypotonia. Now there is more hypotonia in case of REM sleep. EEG pattern in NREM sleep, it is more of slow high voltage delta waves, and REM sleep basically there are fast waves, low voltage, and they are more of beta waves. Now look at the movement of the eyeballs in NREM sleep. There are no rapid movement of eyeballs, but with REM sleep, as the name implies, you can see rapid movements of the eyeball. Now dreams, both NREM sleep and REM sleep, dreams come, but NREM sleep you cannot recollect the dreams, whereas clear recollection of the dream happens with the REM sleep. Duration is more 30 minutes to 90 minutes in a spell. 75% of the total sleep of a person will be the non-REM sleep. Now the REM sleep is normally less, 5 to 30 minutes in a spell, and 25% of the total sleep. Please remember, NREM sleep is 30 minutes to 90 minutes, whereas REM sleep is 5 minutes to 30 minutes. Now, how easy is it to wake a person while in NREM sleep and REM sleep? Now, the threshold for arousal by sensory stimulus, moderate in case of NREM sleep, it is elevated in case of REM sleep, that's why it's called paradoxical. That means you need to, put really a good effort to make a person, get up from the REM sleep. It's more difficult. The strength of the stimulus used to wake up a person should be really strong, and that's exactly why REM sleep, we also call it as a paradoxical sleep. Now, if you look at the pulse, heart rate and respiratory rate, in NREM sleep, it is at the lowest and it's very regular, whereas in REM sleep, it commonly increases and it's irregular. I told you it depends on the kind of dream the person sees, also makes a difference to the pulse, heart rate and respiratory rate. Now, if you look at the brain activity, in NREM sleep, the brain activity is less, and in REM sleep, it is more. Oxygen consumption is less in NREM sleep and it's more in REM sleep. Now, when you talk about the pontogeniculo-occipital spikes, it is not seen in NREM sleep, whereas the pontogeniculo-occipital spikes are present in REM sleep, and these spikes, where do they originate from? They originate from the pontine reticular formation. Now, the important neurotransmitter in NREM sleep is the serotonin content at the raphe nucleus, And when it comes to REM sleep, it is noradrenaline content at locus of correlance. I think you should be very thorough with these 11 points and normally this is a 5-marker ask, differentiate or tabulate the difference between NREM and REM sleep. So I think this particular slide should give you a full clarity on what the two types of sleeps are. Now let's have a look at what are the brain areas that control sleep and waking. So here you have the figure. I think I'll just explain with this. So the brain areas that control sleep and waking are, you have the basal forebrain. What is the basal forebrain? You have, I think it will be better you follow this rather than looking at the figure. So the basal forebrain part, or the yellow part, is, you have the preoptic and the diagonal band of Broca. Stimulation, required is both high and low frequency of the preoptic and the diagonal band of Broca will cause a person to sleep. Now there is something called as a medullary synchronizing zone, the reticular formation, which basically arouses the brain via the glutamate and the acetylcholine, also norepinephrine also comes into picture here. Now the locus coeruleus, it arouses the brain via the norepinephrine. So these are basically the centers. You have the preoptic and the diagonal band of the Broca. You have the reticular formation, or you put it as the medullary synchronizing zone, and then you have the locus coeruleus. So these are basically the 3 brain areas that controls sleep and wakefulness. So basically these 3 centers, please be very clear what exactly they are doing, stimulation of which puts, the person to sleep, and the stimulation of which causes the person to be awake. Please be thorough with that. Now the sleep centers, a little more clearly it's given. You have the basal forebrain, where acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter, it's for wakefulness, and GABA, when the neurotransmitter is released, it induces sleep. Now reticular formation, the neurotransmitter, the glutamate, acetylcholine, norepinephrine, which results in the wakeful cycle. Now the locus coeruleus, you have the norepinephrine, which again causes the persons to be awake. Now the raphe nucleus, where serotonin is released, there is REM suppression, or the rapid eye movement sleep is suppressed when serotonin is released by the raphe nucleus. Now let's go to sleep disorders. Now when you talk about sleep disorders, the most important one is, somnambulism, which you call it as sleepwalking. Now the sleepwalking, it happens in stage 4 of the sleep. Now the person does sleepwalking with eyes open, and he has that magical ability to avoid obstacles. He doesn't go, the person is in stage 4 of sleep, and with eyes open, unaware of his surroundings, you think, but he doesn't, go and, strike a wall or fall. No. He would have that ability to avoid obstacles. Now then you have the sleep terrors in stage 3. Then you have insomnia, hypersomnia, narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is basically an irreversible urge to sleep during daytime. That means there is sudden involuntary attack of sleep during work. It is due to inability to inhibit the REM sleep. That is what you call as narcolepsy. Then there is insomnia is there. I think I've already mentioned that. Insomnia is basically, difficulty in falling asleep and frequent awakening even if the person falls asleep. It could be due to any medical or psychiatric causes. Then you have hypersomnia. Hypersomnia is basically an very excessively long or deep sleep from which a person can be awakened only by vigorous stimulation, and causes can be any head injuries, stroke, encephalitis. And then you have something called as the sleep sickness. Now sleeping sickness is something like it suffers from insomnia during night and sleeps during the day. It can be due to infection by trypanosome gambians. Now nightmares occurs in REM sleep, and dreams as with hallucinations. So these are basically the sleep disorders. And now when it comes to sleep hygiene, what are the care you're going to take so that the person gets a good quality sleep. The caffeine use should be limited, even alcohol, and you should avoid watching TV during bedtime, even reading, using your phones. All this are part of sleep hygiene. So that's basically about sleep. And please remember, sleep is a very often asked 5 marker. There are many 3 markers which can come from this chapter. So before I wind up, I would just like to mention about 1 or 2 conditions which you call it as sleep resembling conditions. Something like you would have heard about the term hibernation, which is basically periodic seasonal sleep. Now, this hibernation or the periodical seasonal sleep is seen in certain animals like amphibians and reptiles, which go into sleep during adverse conditions. You would have heard about, the hibernation tendency of polar bears. It's a very interesting part. If you're interested, you can read more on that. Now, then you have the anesthetic sleep. Basically, this is caused by the administration of various anesthetic drugs. Then you have something called as a hypnotic sleep. This also resembles sleep and can be induced by hypnosis. Then there's something called as coma. This is a condition that develops due to any damage of the brain. So these are basically sleep resembling conditions. So I think that's about this topic of sleep. Be very thorough with EEG and sleep, because they are that very often asked 5 markers, and also many 3 markers come from that. So I think we wind up with today's class. Study well. Please make your lecture notes, get your mind maps ready. All these topics should be at the tip of your tongue, because these topics, if you get a question for university exam, the advantage is you can score a full, because a little understanding of the concepts, and I think you really know how to put in the points in the form of those figures what I have shown, the tabular columns I have displayed. I think scoring becomes very easy with these topics, because there are few topics which, how much ever you prepare, for an undergraduate first year MBBS student, it becomes a little difficult to score more than might be 7 or 7.5 out of 10 when I talk in the point of a 10 marker. So these topics, please make sure this gives you the added advantage. You get a 5 marker. If you are really very thorough with the contents which I have told you all, it's very easy to score a 5 or a full 3 mark if this comes as a short note. So please study well. Okay, thanks children for listening. That's it.